السلام العادل إنها كلمات ليست كالكلمات، لن توفيها الكلمات حقها لأنها أعظم من جل الكلمات. في السلام العادل ثم أنت وأنا وأنتم ونحن جميعاً الواحد المتعدد بهويات متعددة في واحدة هي هوية الإنسان، متوحدة ومجتمعة في عالم ممكن وعالم واجب الوجود، a possible world. من هناك، من أقصى الشرق العربي، شاعر إنسان جاء يسعى تحدوه رغبة جارفة، a burning desire، أن يحقق هدفاً أسمى وأسمى وأنبل. أتى من بلد صغير في مساحته لكنه عظيم في إنجازه. الكويت مركز العمل الإنساني في العالم. جاء نحو جزيرة صغيرة المساحة هي الأخرى، دولة مالطا، لكنها في قلب المتوسط مركز للحضارات ومجمع للهويات. حين نزورها على تنوعنا، حيثما وجهنا وجوهنا فيها وجدنا أنفسنا. فقدركما أيها البلدان الصغيران، الكويت ومالطا صغيران في المساحة، أن تكونا أكبر من الأكبر بكتابة تاريخ السلام. ليس ذلك الذي نتوهمه أو نتخيله أو نظنه، بل ما ينبغي أن نحققه. جاء عبد العزيز سعود البابطين مشبعاً بالأمل والحب والعدل في كل نفس يصاعد منه نحو رجل مد له يده الرئيس جورج فيلا، رجل في تجربته السياسية يختزل الحكمة المتوسطية والرؤية بعيدة المدى. جورج فيلا الإنسان الذي يرفع رأسه في سماء المتوسط فلا يرى غير عدالة السماء، عدالة الخالق. تعاهد معاً على خدمة الإنسان بأن ينبجس منه الإنسان القائد للسلام العادل من أجل السلام العادل. لعلكم لا تعرفونهما جيداً، لكن إذا عرفتم السلام العادل عرفتم جورج فيلا وعبد العزيز سعود البابطين. رجلان تعاهدا على قرع طبول العدل لأنهما لا يعرفان سواها، أي طبول الفرح. أقول لهما باسمنا جميعاً: نقدركما تقديراً جاوز التقدير بعضه، وفي طول عمرنا ليس يمكن عرضه. أطال الله عمركما، لأن العظماء يظلون دائماً واقفين، ولأن السلام العادل فوق الأرض وليس تحتها. الإخوة الكرام، إنهما يستحقان منا جميعاً أن نقف لهما تبجيلاً، هما معلم السلام العادل الآن. Is it so long to see just peace tomorrow? هل سننتظر كثيراً كي نرى السلام العادل غداً؟ اليوم في هذا المنتدى نريد ألا ننتظر كثيراً كي نرى السلام العادل غداً. بهذه الكلمات التي هي ليست كالكلمات ينطلق المنتدى العالمي الثاني لثقافة السلام العادل، لقاء مالطا 22 و2000 مالطا ميتينج 2022. Thank you. شكراً.
Mr. Abdulaziz Saud al-Baptain, Presidents, President Emeriti, Speakers of National Assemblies, Excellencies, dear participants. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome you to Malta for the second World Forum for Culture of Peace. Today, we come together to discuss various aspects of leadership for just peace. I want to express my gratitude to the Abdulaziz Saud al-Baptain Foundation for choosing Malta to hold the Second World Forum for Culture of Peace. And it is a most opportune moment to discuss an agenda of peace. What the world is witnessing at the moment is an atrocious attack on all notions of democracy, stability, sovereignty, and territorial integrity. The world is witnessing a complete disregard of agreements and international institutions. I am sure that this conference joins me in hoping for a quick ceasefire, a return to the negotiating table, and finding diplomatic solutions. The humanitarian tragedy unfolding in front of our eyes is unacceptable. Indeed, it is a sad moment for Europe and for the international community as a whole. Let me at the outset state and repeat that what we are witnessing on the European continent is a threat to global stability and direct affront to humanity. With heavy heart, one observes that this is not an isolated case. From around the world, human beings continue to face persecution, threats, military violence, and the constant dissolution of harmonious existence. These events have unfortunately brought us face to face with the very dire consequences of war, something that Europe had thought was something that we had relegated to the past. The classical Roman poet Virgil was right to state in the Aeneid, Bella horrida bella, war, horrid war. These harrowing events, bringing poverty and death to millions of innocent people, echo other destructive state-sanctioned foreign and domestic policies. There is no space for aggression and defiance of international law and human rights treaties at this day and age. In a post-pandemic recovery period, we should not be talking about war, but about a dialogue, about social justice and peace. And this is exactly why most of you have traveled long distances to join us here in these exchanges. In this audience here, we have many countries represented from around the world and many people from different walks of life. Over the next 2 days, we will exchange and debate on how we can all be promoters of just peace, irrelevant of nationality or status. If we analyze the history of civilizations, we come to a stark reality that most often peace has been unjust, and what was projected as justice was more hostile and aggressive than peaceful. Where the victors imposed their idea of peace without consultation with the affected peoples and describe the resultant situation as peace. Very often, this resulted in an imposed temporary end to violence and the creation of a feeling of dissatisfaction in most or in all parties. Immanuel Kant, in his book Perpetual Peace, had already stated that peace agreements should avoid clauses that carry the seeds for the outbreak of further war. Kant very famously stated as well that there is a moral obligation to peace. Some immediate questions come to mind. What do we intend by peace? How does one make it just? And above all, how does one make it last? Professor John Galtung, who is a leader in contemporary theories of peace, suggested that defining peace is a never-ending task. There's a lot of truth in this phrase. The definition of peace has been evolving since time immemorial. We have moved from the concept that peace is just the absence of war or violence, or is a political situation that is the opposite of war. By just peace, contemporary scholars understand that it is a social state of well-being in which all relationships are in harmony. Just peace addresses both structural violence and direct violence as it embraces restorative justice, trauma healing, conflict transformation, and peace-building strategies that put the human being at the center. It also puts in equal balance peace and justice. This nexus between peace and justice is at the core of the functioning of the United Nations. In fact, the United Nations Declaration on the Right to Peace states that peace is not only the absence of conflict, but also requires a positive, dynamic, and participatory process where dialogue is encouraged and conflicts are solved in a spirit of mutual understanding and socio-economic development that is ensured. Furthermore, the United Nations Declaration and Programme of Action on a Culture of Peace, adopted September 1999, describes a culture of peace as a set of values, attitudes, traditions, and modes of behavior and ways of life. These are to be based on a respect for life, ending of violence, and the promotion and practice of non-violence through education, dialogue, and cooperation. Excellencies, dear participants, whilst definitions and theories help us understand the process, we need to uptake, and also the new tools that we have to develop to aim for peace, we also have to have a realistic overview of the situations on the ground. It has been said that the link between justice and peace is often overshadowed by more immediate concerns like security and stability. Very often, the semantics change to accommodate our interest, our own interest, and the spirit of common good dies out. It is on this point that we have to work together as leaders, parliamentarians, academics, and civil society. We cannot have just peace if we still live in a world of inequalities, big or small. There cannot be peace when people are hostile to each other just because they are different or treated differently. There cannot be peace where there are social injustices, where there are chronic industrial disputes. There cannot be peace where there is racism, where there is xenophobia and ostracism. Pacifism is also very dangerous. We cannot turn a blind eye on those who are living in poverty or in other vulnerable situations. We cannot ignore the plight of those affected by disabilities, by chronic unemployment, by addiction, by criminality. These are some of the areas that we need to tackle in this regard. The role of women and girls in all aspects of life needs to be reinforced and sustained through active and meaningful participation in societal life. Women make up half of the population of the world, and their contribution is indispensable to ensure a just and peaceful existence. We have woken up to this reality rather late, but that does not justify not changing our old habits. On the contrary, these should spur us on to make up for all the time that has been lost in not putting to best use the latent capabilities in women and girls. We also need to listen more to the voice of young people. They are not the future, they are a living present, and our actions will influence theirs in the coming years. We need to understand that the involvement of many talented young people will help in the development and transformation of better systems that possibly will make our world a more just one. Another important consideration is creating an environment of peace and dialogue, and that is that of respect of different beliefs. Too often, beliefs are used as an excuse to start conflicts. More tolerance and more acceptance will build trust and reduce fears of imposition from one group over another, hence fostering a sense of understanding and reducing to the minimum the need to resort to violent practices. The change in climate, including food and energy security, is another area that deserves our attention. The well-being of many people depends on them. Drastic changes in the natural environment forces displacements and the search for a better life and opportunities. Drought, crop failure, desertification, these are some of the environmental conditions that could disrupt whole societies and end any existing peace. Another concern, which I am sure many of us would share, is the easy access to small arms and light weapons. It is with such weapons that most conflicts, big or small, are fought. Better controls on the distribution of small arms and light weapons would reduce in no small way violent and aggressive activities which lead to conflicts, to the displacement of whole populations, and subsequently to humanitarian emergencies. At times, even death due to hunger, if humanitarian aid and medicines fail or are prevented from arriving. Excellencies, dear participants, we can all make a difference in promoting a culture of just peace. The global pandemic has taught us all how international cooperation and multilateral solidarity are essential in ensuring that no one is left behind. The United Nations 2030 Agenda and the Sustainable Development Goals set 17 criteria to have a more just and equitable world. It is up to us to determine their fulfillment. And may I point out that 2030 is only 8 years from now. We have the responsibility to continue working on a local level to achieve these aims. I also felt this urgency to contribute here in Malta to foster our national unity. To this effect, in the coming weeks, a foundation will be set up to see that dialogue and understanding continue across all future presidencies. On a multilateral level, Malta is aiming to be elected to the United Nations Security Council later on this year. As a small neutral country placed strategically in the middle of the Mediterranean, Malta has always acted as a bridge between nations of the northern and southern shores. Our aim is to continue being propagators of peace, even more so within the structures of the United Nations. Excellencies, dear participants, I look forward to hearing the debates and the views on how leadership can promote a culture of just peace in the next 2 days. And I do hope that you have a good stay here in Malta. I want to share with you an observation from Graham Simpson, who is a lead author on youth, peace and security, and was tasked by the Secretary General of the United Nations to carry out a progress report as mandated by the United Nations Security Council Resolution 2250 on youth, peace and security. He said that justice and peace are a part of a continuum, meaning that we need to work on their balance every day to ensure that just peace is transformed into a sustainable and lasting peace. I conclude by expressing my full support to the thoughts expressed by His Excellency Abdulaziz Sa'ud al-Baptain in his book, Contemplations for Peace, for all mankind to embrace peace as a value, a goal, and a way of life. Thank you for your attention.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد النبي الأمين وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. فخامة الرئيس جورج فيلا رئيس جمهورية مالطا الصديقة، العم الفاضل الأستاذ عبد العزيز سعود البابطين رئيس مؤسسة عبد العزيز سعود البابطين الثقافية، معالي الأخ أنجيلو فاروجيا رئيس برلمان مالطا، أصحاب الفخامة والمعالي والسعادة، الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. بداية أجد لزاما علي أن أتوجه برسالة حب وصدق وعرفان إلى العم الكبير عبد العزيز سعود البابطين على دعوته الكريمة ورسالته الصادقة. إن ما تفعله أيها الكريم من نشاطات ثقافية ومنتديات معرفية عالمية أمر مهم جدا، وثق أننا مسكونون بالعرفان لما تقوم به. فأن تجمع مثل تلك القامات السياسية والثقافية من مختلف أقطار العالم، وأن تربط تلك النخب الفكرية بقضايا مصيرية عابرة للقارات والأديان والأعراق، أمر ليس بالسهل، وأعرف أنه يحتاج إلى مثابرة وجهد وطاقة كتلك التي تملكها، ويحسدك عليها الكثير، فلك منا جميعا كل الشكر والتقدير. وأسأل الله أن يوفقك فيما تعمل ويسدد خطاك فيما تمضي، وأن تبقى مؤسسة عبد العزيز البابطين الثقافية منارة وشعلة وقدوة. والشكر موصول لمالطا الصديقة رئيساً وشعباً. إن رعايتكم واستضافتكم لهذا المنتدى المهم يا فخامة الرئيس يعكس حرصكم وحرص مالطا على احتضان كل ما من شأنه تتسير الهواة الثقافية بين شعوب الأرض وترسيخ ثقافة السلام والتعايش. كيف لا ومالطا التي تتربع في قلب البحر المتوسط كانت ومنذ القدم وبالرغم من صغرها مسرحاً لما مر بالمنطقة من أمم وحضارات عريقة، من فينيقيين وإغريق ورومان وعرب ونورمان وعشرات الحضارات والثقافات، فكانت بحق شاهدة وتجسيداً حقيقياً للتنوع الثقافي الإنساني. فشكراً لكم يا فخامة الرئيس على حسن الضيافة وكرم الوفادة، وشكراً للشعب المالطي الصديق. الأخوة الحضور، وأنا أقرأ مصطلح ثقافة السلام الذي تسمى به المنتدى منذ لاهاي 2019 يتبادر إلى ذهني سؤال: هل يحتاج السلام إلى ثقافة؟ هل يحتاج السلام إلى ثقافة؟ وبالتبعية هل هناك ثقافة للحرب والتصارع بصفتهما نقيضاً للسلام؟ عن نفسي أجيب بنعم، لأن للأسف العنصرية والتمذهب والتمييز والتحزب الضيق والرغبة في التوسع والنزعات الاستعمارية كلها ثيمات ثقافية، وكلها مواد خام أولية تتغذى بنسق ثقافي ممنهج، وتكون مآلاتها دائما الاحتراب والتصارع والفوبيا المتبادلة. لذلك فإن مفهوم السلام مفهوم ثقافي بالدرجة الأولى قبل أن يكون سياسيا. بمعنى آخر، جنوح الإنسان إلى السلام والتصالح لا يجب أن يكون هدفا تكتيكيا، ولا يجب أن يكون ناتجا عن عجزك عن الحرب أو كسبا للوقت. السلام يجب أن يكون هدفا استراتيجيا وغاية أخيرة ونهج حياة وطريقة عيش، أو بعبارة أخرى ثقافة. ولكي يتحقق ذلك فإننا مطالبون دائما بتعزيز ثقافة الوحدة الإنسانية المبنية على احترام التنوع، ثقافة التكامل والتعاون، بدلاً من ثقافة الاستغلال والاختراق والتفوق العرقي أو الديني. الأخوة الحضور، لأنني في هذا المنتدى أتحدث كوني برلمانياً إلى جانب ثلة من البرلمانيين المرموقين من كافة أقاليم العالم، فسأشدد على حقيقة أن دور البرلمانات والبرلمانيين في إشاعة وترسيخ ثقافة السلام هو دور محوري ومفصلي. ولأن البرلمان هو صوت الناس، فالناس بالضرورة تجنح للسلم. الشعوب مهمومة بلقمة العيش والسكن المحترم والأمن والتعليم والخدمات العامة الجيدة وغيرها من المطالب الإنسانية الطبيعية. أما بعض أصحاب النفوذ والمهووسون بالتوسع والتربح والسيطرة فهؤلاء هم المستفيدون من الاحترابات، ويكون الناس وقوداً لتلك الصراعات، مرة باسم الدين، وتارة باسم الوطن، ومرة باسم العرق وغيرها. لذلك فدور البرلمانات الحقيقي هو دور تنويري، أو هكذا يجب أن يكون. والخطر كل الخطر عندما تتحول البرلمانات إلى منتديات لتكريس الشعبوية والغوغائية وتأجيج العواطف والغرائز البدائية وكل أنواع التوحش السياسي. أقول هذا الكلام لأن السلام بطبعه أمراً يتعلق بالاستثمار بالمستقبل لا اللحظة الراهنة، ولأن السلام طريقة عيش أبدية وليس أمراً طارئاً، ولأن بناء السلام كما قلت في منتدى لاهاي قبل 3 سنوات يحتاج إلى عقلاء كثر، بينما الحرب تحتاج أحياناً إلى شخص واحد أحمق. فهنا تبرز أهمية الممارسة البرلمانية الرشيدة، الممارسة التي تدفع باتجاه السلم الأهلي والأمن المجتمعي، حتى وإن كانت على حساب الخسائر الشخصية. وأنا على المستوى الشخصي وبعد تجربة برلمانية عمرها 16 عام أقول آسفاً إن الكثير من البرلمانيين في كل بقاع العالم يعملون للانتخابات القادمة بدلاً من الأجيال القادمة، إلا من رحم الله. حتى لو كان الطريق إلى الانتخابات القادمة يتطلب خطاباً عصابياً موتوراً، خطاباً مفرقاً لا جامعاً، خطاباً عاطفياً وانفعالياً لا خطاباً عقلانياً وهادئاً. السلام أيها الأخوة يحتاج إلى هدوء وحكمة ونضج وتعقل وترون وتقليب الآراء على أكثر من وجه. السلام يحتاج إلى خطاب التفهم لا التشكيك، خطاب الوعد لا الوعيد، خطاب المستقبل بكل ما يتطلبه من بعد نظر ومسؤولية وأمانة. هذا هو التحدي الحقيقي أمام كل برلماني العالم. الحكمة بدلاً من دغدغة العواطف، التصارح بدلاً من التسويف، العمل للمستقبل بدلاً من استنزاف الحاضر بكل ما فيه من عابرية ومؤقتية وزوال. وأنا أمام الآن الكثير من القامات وأدرك جيداً أنهم يعرفون ماذا أعني بكلامي. لذلك أيها الأخوة والأخوات، إن الاستثمار في ثقافة السلام ليس ترفاً أو لغواً أو لهواً، بل هو خيار استراتيجي وحيد، لأن كل البدائل مقلقة ومدمرة وتنذر بالكوارث. إذا لم تكن الآن فبالتأكيد بعد حين. والتاريخ يخبرنا أن كل الحروب خاسرة، وكل الصراعات تحمل في طياتها آثار مدمرة آنية وبعيدة المدى، وأن السلام شرط أساسي ووحيد لكل تنمية وتقدم. ختاماً، شكراً لمؤسسة عبد العزيز البابطين الثقافية مرة أخرى على هذه الفرصة التي تجمع من خلالها أسماء ثقيلة الوزن سياسياً وفكرياً. والشكر مجدداً مرة أخرى للعم الفاضل عبد العزيز سعود البابطين الذي يقوم بجهد تنويري مهم وفارق في التعاطي مع قضايا الإنسان الملحة في وقت يمور فيه العالم بصراعات مكلفة إنسانياً جلها كان بالإمكان تفاديها وتحاشيها لو أعطي للعقل فرصة وللحكمة فسحة. ولا أنسى مرة أخرى أن أتوجه بالشكر الجزيل لمالطا رئيساً وقيادة وشعباً. شكراً لكم والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
أيها الحضور الكرام، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. فخامة رئيس مالطا الدكتور جور فيلا، فخامة رئيس ألبانيا السيد إيليرميتا، فخامة رئيس جمهورية كوسوفو السيدة فيجورا أسماني، معالي رئيس البرلمان المالطي أنجلو فروج، معالي رئيس مجلس الأمة الكويتي السيد مرزوق الغانم، معالي السيد محمد ناشد، رئيس برلمان جمهورية المالديف، السادة الرؤساء، السادة نواب رؤساء البرلمانات والسادة البرلمانيون، السادة الأمناء العامون والمدراء العامون للمنظمات الدولية وممثلو المؤسسات التعليمية وممثلو منظمات المجتمع المدني، السادة الوزراء، السيدات والسادة السفراء، السيدات والسادة الحضور، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. يسعدني في إطار التعاون بين مؤسسة عبد العزيز سعود البابطين الثقافية ورئاسة جمهورية مالطا الصديقة أن أتقدم بجزيل الشكر إلى فخامة الرئيس الدكتور جورج فيلا على استضافته المنتدى العالمي الثاني لثقافة السلام العادل، ورعايته وحضوره، وهو ما يؤكد إيمانه بتوجهات هذه المؤسسة والتزامه والتزام دولة مالطا بالدفاع عن السلام العادل. وتقدم بالشكر أيضاً إلى معالي الأمين العام للأمم المتحدة السيد أنطونيو هورتريش على توجيه رسالة مكتوبة إلى الحاضرين في هذا المنتدى دعماً ومساندة ستقرأ بعد حين، وكذلك إلى السيد رئيس الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة عبد الله شاهد الذي وافق على المجيء ولكن تعذر عليه ذلك فأرسل إلينا كلمته مسجلة بالفيديو وستعرض كذلك بعد حين. وأنه ليطيب لي أيضاً أن أرحب بكم جميعاً وأن أشكركم على الحضور والمشاركة التي ستكون دون شك قيمة نوعية، كما أنني أعتذر للسادة الرؤساء الذين وافقوا على الحضور والتزموا بذلك، ولكن جائحة كورونا والشروط الصحية المتبعة في السفر منعتهم من ذلك، وهم فخامة رئيس مونتينيغرو ميلو، وفخامة رئيس جمهورية السودان الجنوبي سالفا كير، وفخامة رئيس البرتغال مارسيلو زينالو دي سوسا الذي اعتذر في آخر لحظة لأسباب قاهرة، وكذلك نائب رئيس كينيا ويليام روتو، وملك مملكة تورو أويو، إنهم الغائبون الحاضرون بيننا فلهم منا كل التقدير. إن جهودنا مستمرة لتنفيذ مبادرتنا التي نؤمن بها حول ثقافة السلام العادل من أجل أمن أجيال المستقبل، وأذكر أننا قدمناها في جلستين متتاليتين إلى الجمعية العامة للأمم المتحدة في 7 سبتمبر عام 2017 ثم في 5 سبتمبر عام 2018 بهدف تدريس مبادئ ثقافة السلام العادل بين الطلبة من الحضانة إلى الجامعة، وحظيت بموافقة واعتماد مكتب رئيس الجامعة رئيس الجمعية العامة. كان المنتدى الأول في محكمة العدل الدولية في لاهاي بهولندا خطوة أولى حول تدريس ثقافة السلام وحماية التراث الثقافي، وركزنا على العراق واليمن من أجل حماية التراث الثقافي في هذين البلدين، وعلى جمهورية أفريقيا الوسطى لإحلال السلام داخلها. السيدات والسادة، إن لقاءنا اليوم الذي يتم في مالطا في العاصمة فاليتا ضمن المنتدى العالمي الثاني حول القيادة من أجل السلام العادل يكتسب رمزيتين خاصتين. الرمزية الأولى هي رمزية المكان، فجزيرة مالطا رمزاً للتعايش بين الشعوب، وهي فساء جميلة من الثقافات والحضارات فينيقية وقرطاجية ورومانية وبيزنطية وعربية ونورماندية وأسبانية وفرنسية وإنجليزية، وتتعايش فيها كل الأديان. إن لها هوية جامعة فريدة ووحدة وطنية متميزة، إذن هي مثال يجب أن يقتدى به. أما الرمزية الثانية فهي الإجماع على هدف مشترك واحد وغاية نبيلة سامية: السلام العادل. وهذا الجمع الطيب من الإخوة والأصدقاء هو من حوالي 30 دولة و5 قارات، وبمشاركة مؤسسات قيادية في العالم في الجلسات الثلاث، متمثلة في رئاسات جمهوريات وحكومة وبرلمانات ومؤسسات دولية ومدنية. إنها مشاركة عالية المستوى تدل على أن هناك إجماعاً منقطع النظير على ما نقوم به وما نود تحقيقه، وهذا يندرج ضمن ما جعلته في كتابي تأملات من أجل السلام العادل وسيلة خامسة، وسميتها العمل التفاعلي المشترك. فيمثل هذا الإجماع وهذا التفاعل سنواصل بثقة كبيرة وثبات مسار عملنا هذا، ويجب أن نتيقظ فيه ها هنا، فنحن جميعا مؤمنون بقيم السلام العادل، لكن الإيمان وحده غير كاف، إذا لم يقترن بالفعل والعمل، فعلينا أن نتقدم سويا لإنجاز عظيم من أجل المحافظة على إنسانية الإنسان وعلى قيم الإنسانية الرفيعة، بداية بنشر ثقافة السلام العادل وتجفيف منابع الظلم ثم تحقيق الوئام. وهنا أقترح عليكم أن توافقوا على تشكيل وفد من شخصيات من بينكم معروفة عالمياً للقيام بوساطة بين ما يحدث الآن من تقتيل وتهديم للثقافات والإرث الثقافي الذي حصلنا عليه من آبائنا وأجدادنا، وللأسف يدمر هذا اليوم. أرى أن يشكل وفد يذهب إلى الدولتين المتحاربتين ليحاول تهدئة الأمور وإنهاء هذه الحروب التي لا تؤدي إلا إلى الخراب والدمار والتأثير الكبير على الإنسانية. أيها القادة السياسيون وممثلو المؤسسات والخبراء رفيعو المستوى في الهيئات الحكومية الدولية ومنظمات المجتمع المدني والمثقفون، إنكم تجتمعون اليوم وغدا للتحاور بصدق حول كيفية دفع المجتمع الدولي ضمن مسار من التعاون لإعداد مشروع القيادة من أجل السلام العادل وتأسيس منصة عالمية خاصة بذلك، وهو ما يقتضي تحفيز جميع الأطراف المعنية على المستوى السياسي والاجتماعي والتعليمي من أجل العمل مؤسساتياً وجماعياً بصفتكم قادة السلام العادل من أجل أمن مستقبل العالم. هي رحلتنا معاً من أجل السلام العادل ومن أجل إرساء ثقافته والوعي بضرورته والانتصار له، ويجب أن لا نتوقف وأن نذكر وأن نكرر المحاولة، وفي النهاية سننجح بإذن الله. وفقنا الله جميعا. شكرا فخامة الرئيس جورج فيلا، وشكرا أيها السيدات والسادة القادة، وشكرا للأخوات والأخوة الحاضرين، وشكرا لشعب مالطا العزيز. السلام عليكم.
Excellency President of Malta, Dr. George Vella, Your Excellency Abdulaziz Sa'ud Al-Baptain, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my honor to present to you the message of Antonio Guterres, the Secretary General of the United Nations, to this World Forum for Culture of Just Peace. I am pleased to send my greetings to the second edition of the World Forum for Culture of Just Peace. Thank you for coming together to explore institutional mechanisms, educational programs, tools and action plans to foster leadership for just peace. Our world is in turmoil. Conflicts are spinning out of control. Geopolitical divides are deepening, hindering efforts to find peace. Mistrust and division are driving people apart. COVID-19 has wreaked havoc everywhere, and inequality and poverty are on the rise. The climate crisis is worsening, exacerbating vulnerabilities and escalating humanitarian needs. Our response to all these challenges must be rooted in solidarity and centered on effective multilateral cooperation. The concept of a culture of peace provides an intellectual frame and political impulse for action. It embodies the yearning to make peace a way of life. Peace must be our goal and our guide. Dignity, hope, progress, and prosperity all depend on peace. But peace depends on us. It is at the heart of the United Nations Charter and all that we do. Let us commit to a culture of peace today and every day. I wish you a successful forum. Thank you.
Your Excellency Dr. George Vella, President of the Republic of Malta. Mr. Abdulaziz Sa'ud Al-Baptain, President of Abdulaziz Sa'ud Al-Baptain Cultural Foundation in Malta. Colleagues and friends, we started the new year confronting many challenges, old and new. Heightened international tension, socio-economic and political instability, compromised global supply chains, climate change, refugee and humanitarian crisis, and a continuing COVID-19 pandemic loomed over our existence. Together, these challenges threaten the multilateral order that has underpinned our world and preserved its stability since the Second World War. They foster resentment and mistrust, threatening to undo the painstaking work we have done over the decades to shape a global regime of cooperation and peace. Now, more than ever, we need to recommit to a culture of peace and strengthen the multilateral architecture necessary for that peace to thrive. To succeed, we must be inclusive and shape a multilateral system that benefits us all, a system that addresses the challenges faced by marginalized communities, is underpinned by strong institutions, and invest in youth that will one day be its stewards. Excellencies, as the pandemic has demonstrated, it is often marginalized and overlooked communities that bear the brunt of human costs of global crisis. The pandemic has also compounded the many indignities they were already enduring: poverty, exclusion, discrimination, inequality, and human rights violations. These indignities fuel resentment and potential strife. That is why the United Nations must work alongside all stakeholders, including local actors and civil society, to identify and address the challenges faced by the Global South, in particular LDCs, LLDCs, and the SIDS. We must mobilize to meet the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development on time and in an inclusive and holistic manner. That is how we will ensure that global recovery benefits everyone and alleviates the socio-economic conditions that gives rise to collective anxiety and conflict. Under no circumstance should the post-pandemic future see a portion of the world better off and another portion worse off than they were before all of this started. This will never lead to a positive outcome. Excellencies, to cultivate and maintain a culture of peace, we need individuals, communities, and governments to proactively pursue it through a strategic process that builds the right circumstances for it to thrive. Building a culture of peace is an active process. It involves bottom-up approaches aimed at preventing, reducing, transforming, and assisting people to recover from all forms of violence. At this critical point in history, it is vital that we strengthen conflict prevention mechanisms. And to that end, I fully concur with the Secretary General's call for greater global investment in peace building. The global community now recognizes the invaluable role of peace building in helping countries to uphold peace of their own accord through strengthening their institutions and governance. In line with the twin resolutions of the 2020 peace-building architecture, I look forward to convening a high-level meeting of the General Assembly to advance, explore, and consider options for adequate, predictable, and sustained peace-building financing. I also concur with the Secretary General's view that we must facilitate greater youth engagement and invest in the young leaders who will one day take our place. Through supporting education that instills the values of international cooperation in our youth, and by providing them avenues to shape global affairs, we will secure the continued future of global multilateralism. It was in this spirit that I launched a youth fellowship program for young diplomats from underrepresented countries. Through the fellowship, these diplomats will work in my office and gain valuable insight into the functioning of the United Nations. They will take back the lessons they learn here and hopefully be better equipped to support their nations to engage with multilateral systems. Alongside their peers, I hope that they will become important and influential advocates within that system, champions of multilateralism that will use their insight, experience, and network to build partnerships and resolve common issues. Excellencies, throughout my tenure as the President of the General Assembly and beyond, I will continue to be guided by the knowledge that global peace and multilateralism are deeply linked. I draw upon the conviction as I call on the international community to cherish cooperation and strengthen bonds of friendship. Together, let us march forward, meet the challenges of our times, and secure a just and lasting peace. I thank you.
In the first session for our two-day conference on just peace. We've heard very good remarks just up to now, and I have the pleasure here to welcome His Excellency Ilir, President of Albania, Her Excellency Vjosa Osmani, President of the Republic of Kosovo, and His Excellency Stjepan Mesic, former President of Croatia. Today we are gathered here to take the opportunity to share our visions for a more just world. We are not here to repeat long-winded political positions or to utter abstract understandings of the word peace. We are not here to repeat yet another conference which leads us to nowhere, with little tangible effects. We are here united as world leaders who believe in the power of dialogue and understanding as the epitome of international relations and human development. I am confident, Excellencies, dear friends, that with your interventions here today, we will be an inspiration for others around the world and the guiding light in a continuously belligerent world. I invite His Excellency Ilir, President of Albania, to share with us his thoughts for today.
Thank you very much, President Vela, for this great event that you are hosting. Also, together with Honorable Sheikh Abdulaziz Saud Al-Babtain. And it's a great pleasure to be here with President of Republic of Kosovo, Madam Vjosa Osmani, and President Stjepan Mesic, and also in front of this audience of honorable personalities from different countries and institutions, but also from academics, civil society, because what we are going to discuss today, it's very important for humanity. And while we speak now, rockets and missiles are thrown to Ukrainian cities, hospitals, schools, and homes. And many civilians have lost their lives, and many are injured. This is a dark period not only for the Ukraine, but for the entire world. And it demonstrates that all the world leaders and all the leading actors in policy making at home and the international arena must be alert and never take peace for granted. We all live under the same sky, but we see different horizons, was saying one of the founders of the European Union. And true leadership involves vision and determination to see ahead to a brighter future, serving to the people, to the country, and protecting peace. True leadership is being able to foresee any potential danger and act ahead, working tirelessly and always inspiring the people to the path of tolerance, inclusion, and harmony among citizens and different nations. True leadership is through examples, not just words and opinions. And true leaders work for and protect peace at all times. And they can prevent conflicts only by building also more democracy for their nations. Only democracy can prevent war and build trust between nations. If governments provide democracy and prosperity at home for their citizens, then there will be mutual respect among nations and among their citizens, regardless of their origin, religion, ethnicity, strength, and size. There are many conflicts in the world today provoked by irresponsible leaders and from the exclusion and violence. Non-democratic leaders oppress their people, divide the nations, and give rise to expansionist ambitions, causing conflicts and threatening peace. The world today is experiencing the rise of populist, nationalist, and extremist currents, which nostalgically support expansionism, the revival of nation-state concepts, ethnic divisions, and even the changing of territorial borders, unfortunately. The recent events in Ukraine must be a lesson and an alarm bell for all the world leaders and democratic alliances, a wake-up call for the attempts of territorial experiments in other regions. Therefore, further efforts must be made and stronger mechanisms must be built to ensure peace in other regions of the continent and also of the world. Preservation of peace in the Western Balkans also is essential for the peace of Europe and the world, as we have seen also in the past. Albania is a non-permanent member of the UN Security Council for the 2022 and 2023 term, and we are doing everything to promote peace and also to de-escalate the situation in Ukraine and in other areas where we have still unresolved conflicts. And I'm glad for the great support of the UN resolution yesterday, 141 countries condemning this Russia invasion to Ukraine. We are committed in strengthening even further the good neighboring relations and policies in our region in order to consolidate peace in the Balkans and to make it a good example how peace can prevail and also can guarantee sustainable development and prosperity for all our citizens. Preservation of peace in the Mediterranean region is crucial also for the present and the future of many countries, but also of different continents, because the Mediterranean region is the cradle of civilization. And this beautiful and fascinating region has served for thousands of years as a cultural, historical, and commercial bridge between the Mediterranean countries and different continents. And Malta is a great witness and example of that. A fascinating mosaic on different cultures and peoples, so rich in the past and present history, values and traditions that make the Mediterranean civilization so unique and impactful in the world heritage, in international affairs, and a great potential and contributor to the world peace in the future. This region is blessed with great civilization and cultural diversity, different histories and religions, nations, natural resources, tourism, and wonderful and hospitable people. It is a real world treasure that should be treated as a common heritage that should unite the peoples rather than divide them. And the Mediterranean region has as a challenge not only preserving and strengthening peace, but also protecting the environment, cultural heritage, resolving any current conflicts, taking measures against the different climate effects, and focusing on the education of the youth and their prosperous future, which should be based on peace always. The best of our national values, love for the country and people, tolerance for one another, faith in God and respect for human integrity must connect the countries and the citizens and serve as a core of the peace and unity. Peace cannot be achieved through violence. It can only be attained through understanding, said Ralph Emerson. Therefore, there must be no place for violence, including religious extremism. Interreligious harmony and coexistence have been achieved many times in the past and can become a reality for every nation. Albania is such an example to the world and for centuries remains a model of peace and harmony between religious communities. All faiths in Albania unite the people even more under the love of the country, and this makes us proud. And I have to thank you also for the great contribution of the Archbishop George Frendo from Malta in Albania, who was leading our Catholic Church and who was serving to our country and to our nation as a real Albanian, and also contributing to further consolidate our great interreligious harmony in the country. And we should not forget that Albania, for 50 years under communist regime, was a country where the belief in God was, by constitution, was prohibited. Something that didn't happen even in former communist countries in Europe. And also, governments must invest more in education and youth, which are the fundamentals of tolerance in society, and also the prospect of the future, and the very foundation of the architecture of peace. Educating children at school with a culture of peace and tolerance, raising them to avoid the language of hate without discriminations of race, religion, and ethnicity. And they should be committed in promoting tolerance and harmony, intercultural cooperation, educating the new generations with the values, historical and cultural riches also of the other people and the other nations. True leaders must combat poverty and inequality and exclusion, because they bring about social conflicts that can ignite radicalism and pose threats to domestic and regional harmony and stability. Honorable guest, peace always remains fragile and threatened. Therefore, we must work for it every second, every minute. It is not a gift, but must be won and protected at all times. And if we are negligent and not vigilant in peace, one day we will awake at war. And the mission of every leader and the aspiration of every nation must revolve around peace and prosperity. And to do that, it should be our way of thinking and of our kids and our youngsters. It should be our way of acting, and it should be our way of living. Thank you. Excuse me if it was a little bit longer.
Dear Mr. President, President Vela, President Meta, President Mesic, speakers of parliament, all of you that are present here today, dear respected organizers, Mr. Abdulaziz Sa'ud Al-Baptain, dear participants of the World Forum for Culture and Peace, ladies and gentlemen. It's great to be here today in the beautiful Valletta, and I thank you all for choosing peace as a uniting force. Because peace indeed is what brings people together. I am honored to have the opportunity to speak to you here today and to represent a peace-loving nation, the people of the Republic of Kosovo, at this forum. Peace, respected participants, is something that my people hold dearly because we know the direct opposite of it. We understand that absolute devastation that comes when there is absence of peace. We understand and cherish freedoms and democracy, but above all, the people of Kosovo respect human values and human rights. Every single person on this planet not only deserves, but has the absolute right to peace. And I believe there is much more as world leaders, but also as individuals, that we can do to contribute to it through listening to one another and through dialogue and mediation. To quote the former First Lady, diplomat, and activist Eleanor Roosevelt, it isn't enough to talk about peace. One must believe in it. And it isn't enough to believe in it. One must work on it. We must work on it because peace and security are an essential factor of human life. A peaceful and secure environment is critical to every society since it affects all aspects of economic and social development in a country. With that in mind, it would be remiss of me to stand here today talking about peace when it is being violated in such a flagrant manner as we speak. The European continent is in a state of emergency. As we gather here today to discuss leadership for just peace, the people of Ukraine are facing aggression, terror, and serious violations of their human rights. Once more, after almost 80 years since the end of World War II and 23 years after the end of war in Kosovo, Europe is being shaken by what we promised to never happen again. But dear friends, what is happening right now in Ukraine and in many parts around the world will not merely stop from happening, nor will what happened in the past ever stop from repeating itself, as long as a language and a practice of appeasement towards dictators is invoked. In situations like these, remaining silent or choosing to stay silent makes one an accomplice. Because in the face of injustice, in the face of war crimes and crimes against humanity, we have to raise our collective voice for humanity and for justice and peace. As Ukraine faces an unprovoked war and as the rest of the world witnesses it, as it unfolds in front of our eyes, we can't stop but wonder, what is indeed the role of world leaders? While to many this might sound like a grand rhetoric, the answer to it might actually determine the fate of our societies and the fate of the history of our days. During these dark hours for our continent, we must be reminded of an essential truth. If peace in Ukraine does not prevail, global peace risks failure as well. And if world leaders fail to unite and stand up to aggression and hegemonic appetites of modern-day autocrats, it is democracy that might fail next. It is great to see that in these moments, the democratic world is more united than ever. Clear language, the language of truth, compassion, and support for each other, as well as actions that are aligned with that language, are the best tools we have to defy the forces standing on the other side. The only way we can preserve peace is through understanding and communication. While it might seem challenging or even impossible at times, it is our best chance to thrive. Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, despite the immense progress that we have made as a country, and indeed as a continent, today we are all reminded that threats to peace and security are constant and active. And while I am delighted to look back at Kosovo's progress with pride and remain overwhelmingly optimistic for our future as a sovereign and independent nation, I have to mention that flagrant assaults on sovereignty and territorial integrity of Ukraine by Russia has rightly shocked the world, as it has indeed shocked our part of the world. It has shocked us because it shows that the battle between democracy and hegemony that is playing out is in fact about so much more than just one country and an aggressive neighbor. It is ultimately and utterly about clash between values. An active attack on the values standing firm at the foundations of our continent and the Union. However, what these darkest moments also teach us is the need to stand together and the value of humanity, peace, and of democratic freedoms. When our way of peaceful life is being threatened in such a deliberate manner, we must work together for a brighter and more peaceful future. At these difficult times for humanity, let's all pledge to be the voice of innocent people that are facing aggression, who are being attacked by aggressors that know no limit to their hegemony. Let's unite our voices so that collectively we can be heard when we say that peace and democracy shall once again prevail. They have prevailed in Kosovo back in 1999, and they will prevail in Ukraine and elsewhere in the world now in 2022. And while we jointly fight Russian propaganda, let us not forget that coordination and communication, without a doubt, is the core pillar to that brighter, more prosperous and peaceful future. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to take a moment to say that this is our chance to demonstrate to our children and to future generations that a world where culture unites people and it crosses over divisions, a world where countries' rights, no matter how big or small they are protected, and a world where peace, just peace, thrives is indeed a possible world. With the ever-increasing disinformation trends, fake news, and the phenomenon of trolls, we are constantly being exposed to different realities. Fake realities, realities that are customized to trigger emotional, impulsive, and at times non-rational reactions. It is the immense power of disinformation and the fake news that is threatening democracies and shattering factual-based realities. But for this as well, there is a cure and there is a sustainable solution. The answer to this is simple. We need to use our voices, our collective voices. We need to use social media precisely with the purpose of unmasking this negative reality. We need to work hard to make sure social media works to our benefit, to the benefit of truth, instead of the opposite. We need to put social media at the service of peace. And in the face of these developments, world leaders cannot stand still. They must not stand still. It is our moral and constitutional obligation to make sure that the suffering and the losses of our citizens are put to an end, and equally so, to fight injustice and inequality across all areas of life. It is our ultimate responsibility to speak out the words of truth and to call things what they truly are. And as we strive to do that, let's make sure that we pass a clear message to our people, our countries, and the world. Let's make sure to commit and to always choose peace first. Ladies and gentlemen, today's world events are precisely why we need to cherish peace and work towards it. Because the opposite is death and destruction. The people of Kosovo have known the opposite of peace for way too long. And now they know very well the pains and sufferings that the opposite of peace and democracy cause, which is why I am so proud to represent such a peace-loving nation that has worked for peace for its entire history. For that reason, our commitment and active engagement for peace, security, and stability in our region, the Western Balkans, but also beyond, is more than just a job. It is a sacred duty that we owe to future generations, so that they never have to go through what we had to go through. Peace is harmony, and harmony is solidarity. It is freedom. That they are so connected to one another. Peace is unity and a joint commitment to make the slogan "Never Again" a reality and not just words. But long-term peace is only possible when there is justice. And long-term peace is always possible when women are also included at the table of peace and dialogue. Let us work together to make it possible. Let us join forces and voices to show true leadership during these devastating times so that a brighter, better, and more peaceful future awaits us all. And as we stand here today, and once we go back to our respective country, let's make sure that we always keep a listening heart, an open mind, and commit to preserving and nurturing constantly the will to engage for the greater good. Thank you all.
Thank you very much for your inspiring and heartfelt speech. You expressed our common feeling for our Ukrainian brethren. You talked about sympathy and about our sorrow. You made a very valid point when you said that every individual has an absolute right to peace. But you made also the point that to have peace, one has to work for it. And you made very valid remarks about the dangers of appeasement and also on the need to protect our values. Lastly, I was also impressed by your underlining the fact of the huge importance that at times we tend to disregard of today's social media. And I think that is something that is very, very much topical. I now invite our last speaker for today, His Excellency Stjepan Mesic, former President of Croatia, to please take the floor.
Excellency, Madame et Monsieur, parce que je parle seulement croate, mais ce que parlerai est à vos sièges, à vos places. Govorimo o temi koja je pogotovo u današnjem svijetu iznimno važna, no govoriti o njoj nije samo stvar trenutka, potrebe trenutka, nego i dug prema odgovornosti što svatko nosi, bio on aktualni lider, bio bivši. Svakako, naime, tko je i kada, zahvaljujući povjerenju građana, obnašao neku visoku dužnost, ne samo da može, nego i mora govoriti o miru, pravednom miru, ali mora, a bolje bi bilo reći, morao bi apelirati i na one koji su temeljem svojih pozicija u međunarodnoj areni predestinirani da o tome odlučuju. U sklopu drugog svjetskog foruma o kulturi pravednog mira, ova je sesija posvećena ulozi lidera u ostvarivanju takvog mira. Ne bih toliko bio preuzetan, pa da s pozicija nekoga tko je bio predsjednik države daje gotove recepte onima koji su to danas. Ni recepte, ni savjete. Moj će pristup biti, dakle, drugčiji. Opredijelio sam se zato da s vama podijelim svoja razmišljanja o tome što uopće znači biti lider i kakav je lider mora biti da bi mogao ostvarivati ono što se od njega očekuje. Drugim riječima, da bi mogao dati doprinos izgrađivanju, uspostavljanju, održavanju i čuvanju pravednog mira. A sam pravedni mir, onaj je mir koji je postignut dogovorom zainteresiranih strana, dogovorom u kojem su svi ravnopravno sudjelovali i dogovorom koji ne dovodi u pitanje legitimne interese i sigurnost ni jedne strane. Lider, sama riječ, označava nekoga tko vodi. I tu već dolazimo od ozbiljnog sraza između temeljnog značenja riječi i osobina većine onih koji su u suvremenom svijetu kite tom pojavom. Nemam na umu nikoga određenoga, ali dozvolit ću si da kažem kako većina današnjih svjetskih i nacionalnih lidera to nisu. Pa slijedom toga od njih i ne možemo očekivati ono što bismo od pravih lidera i mogli i morali očekivati. Današnji takozvani lideri, bilo državni, bili nacionalni, ne vode. Ako se ponekad i čini kao da vode, onda je to u pravilu u pogrešnom smjeru. Oni su tek više ili manje spretni otpravnici poslova, ljudi koji su savladali tehniku i vještinu obavljanja dnevnih zadataka i koji su nimalo nevažno naučili kako svu svoju djelatnost moraju podrediti jednom jedinom cilju, održavanju na vlasti, odnosno osvajanju vlasti. Nitko od njih ne razmišlja o vremenskom rasponu duljem od 4, 5, najviše 7 godina. U tom se ritmu, naime, održavaju parlamentarni, odnosno predsjednički izbori. Lider je, međutim, netko ko razmišlja dugoročno, netko tko ima viziju, strategiju i taktiku. Sjetim se uvijek jednog prilično poznatog zapadnoevropskog političara koji je nekom prilikom rekao kako bi svakoga tko mu kaže da ima viziju poslao na liječnički pregled. Naravno, bila je to ne baš uspjela šala, on je izraz vizija tumačio kao priviđenje. No, ja ne govorim o tome. Govorim o potrebi da onaj tko je pravi lider misli i preko vremenske granice idućih izbora, da razmišlja o širim kategorijama, da ima pred očima razrađen plan kojim će doći do željenog cilja. Dakle, da zna kako će to što je zamislio, svoju viziju ostvariti, u kojim vremenskim rokovima i na koji način. I što je izuzetno važno, da bude svjestan kako svoju viziju ne može i ne smije ostvarivati tako da ugrožava interes i potrebu drugih. U samom startu, među instrumentima ostvarivanja vizije, lider, ako je u pitanju lider koji teži pravednom miru, mora isključiti rat, odnosno primjenu bilo sile, bilo prijetnje silom. To su naime metode i sredstava kojima se provodi mir ne postiže, pravedni mir ne postiže. Može se doduše nametnuti mir, ali takav je nametnuti mir u pravilu ograničenog trajanja, a u samoj svojoj srži sadrži klicu svoje propasti. Pravedni se mir može ostvariti samo ravnopravnim dogovorom zainteresiranih, uvažavajući potrebe i interese svih, pri čemu partikularni interesi i potrebe uvijek moraju biti podređeni jednom zajedničkom općem interesu, miru. Znam da je povijest prepuna mirovnih sporazuma sklapanih nakon ratova i jedva da je neki od tih sporazuma bio pravedan. To ne znači da treba odustati od vizije, a to jest vizija i nije nikakvo priviđenje stalnog, trajnog i pravednog mira. Reći ću nešto uz rizik da ne budem shvaćen ili da me se pogrešno shvati. Mislim da je čovječanstvo spremnije za postizanje pravednog mira od onih koji se zovu liderima. Bilo da je riječ o onima demokratski izabranim, bilo o čelnicima autoritarnih režima. Ljudski rod ne želi živjeti u stalnom ratu, ratnoj psihozi ili pod prijetnjom rata. Ljudi obični ljudi iskreno žele mir jer znaju da bez mira nema napretka, a bez napretka za njih golema većina nema ni boljeg, kvalitetnijeg života. A da bismo uopće mogli stvoriti preduvjete za tako nešto, moramo se ne na riječima, nego djelima vratiti nečemu što je bilo itekako važno za vrijeme onog prvog hladnog rata, aktivnoj, miroljubivoj koegzistenciji. Moramo kao univerzalni pristup odnosima među državama i narodima prihvatiti to da nismo svi jednaki, da svatko ima pravo birati sistem u kojem će živjeti, kao i mijenjati ga, da različitost nije smetnja nego bogatstvo, ukoliko se nekoga drugoga ne pokušava promijeniti na svoju sliku i priliku i da napokon različiti narodi i države mogu i moraju međusobno surađivati na uzajamnu korist i na osnovi pune ravnopravnosti i bez ikakvih diskriminacija po bilo kojoj osnovi. Možda će se nekome učiniti zastarjelim to što govorim, ja međutim mislim da govorim o konceptu budućnosti. Jer hegemonija, bilo čija, nad bilo kime nema budućnosti. Nametanje bez obzira kojim sredstvima onoga što jedan smatra vrijednostima, drugome za koga ono to nisu, nema budućnosti. Prekrajanje svijeta po volji samo jedne velike sile ili nekoliko njih također nema budućnosti. Mi imamo samo jedan svijet i osuđeni smo živjeti u njemu. Odgovornost je dakle lidera da svojim postupanjem, svojim akcijama i inicijativama pridonesu tome da se svijet ne samo o nužnosti, nego doslovno neizbježnosti uzajamne suradnje u uvjetima ravnopravnosti proširi svim meridijanima i paralelama. Paušalno govoreći, današnji lideri to nisu u stanju. Jedva da se netko od njih može uzdignuti iznad trenutnih kratkoročnih interesa, u prvom redu svojih, potom svoje stranke, a tek potom svoje države ili naroda. I to ponavljam iznad trenutačnih kratkoročnih interesa. Gledajte samo sada Ukrajinu. Jedva da netko ima dugoročnu viziju, da ima definiran cilj koji mu teži na dugi rok. Jedva da netko zna kako bi čak i kratkoročne ciljeve ostvario dugoročnije nego sitnim intrigama, podmetanjima, lažima, poluistinama, poticanjem mržnje, izmišljanjem neprijatelja i na osnovi toga homogeniziranjem vlastitog biračkog tijela. I prstiju jedne ruke previše kada bih htio nabrojiti one koji ne odgovaraju stereotipu. Upotrebit ću još jednom taj izraz otpravnika poslova. Mi, međutim, ne živimo u svijetu u kojemu se možemo i smijemo zadovoljiti otpravnicima poslova na pozicijama lidera. Živimo u opasnom svijetu, punom izazova i neizvjesnosti. Takav je svijet. Imperativno traži lidere posvećene krajnjem cilju ostvarivanja pravednog mira. Traži lidere koji će pokazati odgovornost i to ne samo u odnosu na svoje neposredne birače, nego i na generacije koje dolaze. Zaključio bih, dakle, konstatacijom da današnjem svijetu nedostaju oni koji bi imali pravo nazivati se liderima. Lider je, zaključujem, onaj tko ima viziju, strategiju i taktiku. I krajnji cilj, pravedni mir u svijetu. Hvala vam što ste me saslušali.
Good morning, Your Excellencies, dear friends, participants of the important conference, Second World Forum on Culture of Just Peace. First of all, let me say about my gratitude and thanks to His Excellency Dr. George Vella, President of Malta, for inviting me to this conference. And the thanks also goes to the organizers of this very important conference, and special thanks to Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Al-Baptain, Chairman of the Foundation. Again, thanks for the invitation. Unfortunately, I was planning to be present personally, but my health didn't allow me, or doesn't allow me today to travel, so I'm addressing you in a video address. The conference is very timely, it's important. Speaking about peace, and especially just peace, and how to achieve that, this very unpredictable, difficult, both politically, diplomatically, world is utmost important. And I do believe that we have to have long-term and full and that deep discussion about the future of international relations, international politics, because the world has changed. This is not the classical world that we lived 20, 30 years ago with the dominance on international diplomacy with United Nations or European Union or many other international organizations with clear understandings or confrontations of ideologies or systems, be that economic or social. The world has become quite unpredictable. The world has become very interconnected, interdependent. So I call that that world a quantum world. Well, probably you don't know, but in my first life was professor of theoretical physics and astrophysics and mathematics. So now when I years ago was thinking about what's happening in the world, what are the changes related to the new wave of huge technological advances. And in fact, the source of that technological advances are in the quantum revolution that happened around 100 years, more than 100 years ago, with the discovery of quantum physics. The rapid, fantastically quick development of the technology that creates completely new interconnections, completely new environment for our activities, be that business, scientific, cultural, and also political, has changed the world. And in fact, it has huge impact on how politics and real politics is exercised these days. I think that's why a lot of people worldwide have this feeling of unpredictability, instability, and basically an absence of old theories or understandings or comfort of running politics. So that's why years ago I came up with a theory that describes not only the technological advances of today, not only generally how the world has changed, but how specifically international relations and politics has changed. So I call this quantum politics. And we do see today results of the change. I think a lot of political events that are happening even today, at this moment, we couldn't imagine them happening several years ago because we believed in systems, classical politics and institutions, organizations, but things are accelerating very fast. A lot of them are unpredictable, and that's why they give a lot of discomfort to those who are engaged, not only politicians, not only those who are analysts or journalists and others, but also to the general public worldwide. So it's a time that matters and issues of peace, war and peace, matters of leadership, leadership in this new world, leadership in the changed world, leadership in this new quantum world. Definitely that leadership is not going to be the same tomorrow than it was even today, or indeed yesterday. And the usual weapons of politicians, be that in war or in peace, are changing with the time. Take a look at the conflicts worldwide. I think the conflicts are based not only on international relations, understanding or misunderstandings, but they are also, and in the case of conflicts, it's not only about just ordinary weapons or military power, but it's also about public opinion, about media, about real and fake news, and so on and so forth. And everything changes daily, and every move, be that political or non-political one, has a huge impact worldwide. So this world has changed, and it changed to the better or the worse. I leave that to judge you, dear colleagues, at your discussions. But one thing is clear, it's not the same that it was before. And of course, 5 minutes being away from you will not be enough for me to basically go into the explanation of the basics of the quantum politics or the politics in the new quantum world. But one message is clear. We live in a completely different world, which is much more faster, interconnected, interlinked, in many places, in many ways unpredictable, in order to start understanding and navigating this new world and create new leaders that can lead nations and the world to just peace. We have to have a serious discussion where we are now. And where we are now is a world which is a quantum world with quantum behavior, starting from social, technological, culture, military, and political. So I take this opportunity to thank again the organizers. Special thanks to His Excellency the President of Malta, Dr. George Vela, and all the other colleagues. I wish all of you success, and I hope that next conference, on the third one, I'll be healthy to participate. Have a good day and a successful one.
You also made the point that people, to be leaders, they have to have a vision. And the vision is not a vision about how to enrich themselves, but how to bring about the common good. That is very important. You made a very valid point that in their vast majorities, all people around the world want peace. And this is something that we have to keep in mind as leaders and as politicians. May I say it's been a great pleasure to listen to your views about the role of world leaders in promoting leadership for just peace. I also want to thank all those who have joined our meeting today and invite you to join us tomorrow morning for session 2 on the role of governments and intergovernmental organizations, and then in session 3 in the afternoon on the role of parliamentarians and civil society. I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. Thank you.
مفاجأة للشاعر عبد العزيز سعود البابطين. Please have a seat. A side event, a specific side event dedicated to Mr. Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain, which is to be awarded the honoris causa from the Mediterranean University of Albania. سيتم منح الشاعر عبد العزيز سعود البابطين الدكتوراه الفخرية من الجامعة المتوسطية من ألبانيا، وذلك بحضور فخامة الرئيس إلير ميتا.
Thank you, all of you that are part of this ceremony, which is organized from the Mediterranean University of Albania. First of all, Your Excellency, Mr. Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain, dear President of Albania, I'm told that the Kuwait Assembly Speaker is here, so thank you for being part of this ceremony, and all the other distinguished guests, dear colleagues of the Senate of the Albanian University, Mediterranean Albanian University, and all the participants. We are here with a great pleasure in this very important ceremony of conferring the honorary degree, Doctor Honoris Causa, to Mr. Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain, founder, chairman of the board of the trustee of Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain Cultural Foundation, and the president of the scientific board of the Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain Cultural Foundation in the European Union. I invite now the promoter, my colleagues, member of the Academic Senate of the Mediterranean University of Albania, Professor Xenophon Krisafi, Dean of the Faculty of Law and International Relations, and the Professor Nevila Rama, Vice Rector of the university, to give their recommendation why we have decided to have that great honor giving this title to Mr. Abdulaziz. So the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Vice Rector Angeli. Excellencies, dear participants, I'm very pleased and honored to make this recommendation to award the title Doctor Honoris Causa by the Mediterranean University of Albania to His Excellency Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain, founder and chairman of the board of the Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain Cultural Foundation. Based on his valuable activity in the academic, scientific, and first of all, as a testimony of high gratitude for everything he has done for the peace and the future of humanity, I have proposed to the Academic Senate of our university for awarding to Mr. Abdulaziz Saud al-Babtain the honorific title Doctor Honoris Causa, proposal which was approved unanimously. Thank you very much.
The full recommendation will be given to Mr. Abdulaziz for sure, but because we don't want to have you longer here, both our colleagues are just speaking very crucial things, very key things, and not all the materials. So sorry for not being long, but that's our thought about that ceremony.
Thank you very much. Your Excellencies, Mr. Abdulaziz Al-Babtain, I'm honored to be part of this ceremony. My recommendation, besides his engagement in world politics for Mr. Abdulaziz Al-Babtain, I have emphasizes the importance of literature and poetry in his life, which led to his remarkable initiatives to bring Arab literature and poetry to the world reader in efforts and his efforts to establish a number of chairs of the Arab culture in several universities in Europe, United States of America, Asia, and Africa. Therefore, it was my great pleasure to recommend Mr. Al-Babtain in the Academic Senate of Mediterranean University of Albania to be awarded this honorable title, Doctor Honoris Causa, a decision we are here today to confer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, dear colleagues. And I would invite now the President of the Mediterranean University of Albania, Professor Dr. Anastas Angeli, member of the Academy of Science of Albania, to award the title to Doctor Honoris Causa to Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Al-Babtain.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Al-Babtain, Your Excellency, Mr. President Meta, and Speaker of Assembly of Kuwait, dear colleagues from the Academic Senate of Mediterranean University of Albania, distinguished guests, it was my great honor to personally initiate the process of according and now to be part of ceremony of awarding the title Doctor Honoris Causa to Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Al-Babtain on behalf of Mediterranean University of Albania. It is a very special event for us, as it is the first time that Mediterranean University of Albania organizes a ceremony of conferring an academic title outside its aula. As it is special, the personal invitation of Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Al-Babtain for us to be part of the World Forum for Culture of Peace, second edition. Leadership for Peace, Malta Meeting 2022. I will proceed now with the ceremony by reading the decision of Academic Senate of Mediterranean University of Albania. Decision number 13, Tirana, December 20, 2021. Based on the law 1815 on higher education and scientific research in higher education institution in the Republic of Albania, the Statute of the Mediterranean University of Albania, the proposal of the President of Mediterranean University of Albania, and with the consent of Ministry of Education and Sport of the Republic of Albania, the Academic Senate deliberated in its meeting December 20, 2021, and decided to award the title Doctor Honoris Causa to Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Al-Babtain with the motivation for outstanding contribution to the promotion of culture of peace in the international community, the building of common instruments of cooperation through the dissemination of culture, education, and dialogue for the security of future generations. Mr. Abdulaziz Saud Al-Babtain, you are welcome in our family, Mediterranean University of Albania, now as a honor of Senate.
شكرا جزيلا. الحقيقة أنا سعيد جدا بهذا التكريم وبوجودكم معنا في هذه القاعة، ومن بلد كانت تربطنا ولا زالت به روابط ثقافية لعدة قرون سابقة، وهذا دلالة على أنه لا زال هذا الجيل يتذكر بالتأكيد تلك العلاقة الوطيدة التي تربطنا جميعا بهذه الثقافة، ثقافة السلام. وأنا متأكد بأن النتائج التي تتمخض عنها هذه الفعالية التي قمنا بها اليوم سيكون لها الأثر الكبير إن شاء الله بإطفاء نيران الحروب وهذه المشاكل. الحقيقة أنا أهدي هذه الشهادة الدكتوراه التي رقمها 16 من بين الشهادات التي استلمتها طيلة حياتي، فأعتز بها اعتزاز كبير وأقدمها للشعب الكويتي وللقيادة الكويتية الذين لم يعلوا جهدا بتشجيعي في الوصول إلى ما وصلت إليه الآن عندكم، وهذا من فضل الله أولا ثم بفضل كويتنا العزيزة. وشكرا لكم جميع وشكرا للشعب مالطا.